Well, hey folks, relaunching with John Reynolds, a 20-year reflection on WCW Halloween Havoc 1998. Oh boy, this was a mess. There was some good stuff, there was some bad stuff, there was some real shit. There was a really good main event that thankfully was included in this on the WWE Network version, since it got cut off in the original pay-per-view broadcast because everybody ran too damn long, and they had to show that match in its entirety for pay-per-view customers that didn't get to see it on the following Nitro, and I may do a 20-year reflection on that, as that was actually a pretty good Nitro episode and one of the last times, or maybe the last time, that WCW beat Raw in the ratings. Almost said beat Nitro in the ratings. I mean, then again, they kind of did beat themselves by setting themselves on fire, even though they were on fire at this point, and letting themselves burn to the goddamn ground. It was ridiculous how much WCW had, and they just basically burned everything to the ground. It's just sad. I know the AOL Time Warner merger had something to do with it too, but they really self-destructed, and they shouldn't have. But this was a very, very messy show. It had some good shit, it had some bad shit, it had some awful shit, it had a hell of a main event. We're going to get right into it. You like a lot of talking, besides what just opened this review? You're going to get a lot of talking in the beginning, because you have opening vids of Hogan and Warrior to hype that rematch. Oh boy, I will get to that in a bit. Schiavone, Mike Tenay, Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan on commentary, and they did pretty damn well here, especially carrying some of the really bad matches and bad booking decisions. The Nitro Girls appeared 3 or 4 times in this entire pay-per-view, and granted, there was a reason for it. It was to get the, many males and statistically some females to tune in, and stay locked in on the pay-per-view. I don't know why you necessarily need to do that on the pay-per-view, since people paid for it, so they were probably going to keep watching it anyway, because they didn't want to blow all their money. Like blow all their money by walking away from the TV. But okay, cool, whatever. I always fancied Spice. I always thought she was the most beautiful of the Nitro Girls. That's my opinion. Who's your favorite Nitro Girl? Let me know in the comments. You had a Mean Gene interview with Rick Steiner, and then Buff Bagwell came out, and on the previous Nitro, Buff Bagwell had seemingly turned face and tried to attack Scott Steiner to get him away from Rick, because he had that whole thing playing off from Fall Brawl 98 and all that, where Buff and Scott attacked Rick after Buff had been put in an ambulance because he was injured. Yeah, not even, I think maybe 6 weeks later, they suddenly decided to do this, where it was just goddamn ridiculous. Rick feels that Buff has turned over a new leaf, and they are going to face, Buff is going to be in Rick's corner for a match against Scott Steiner tonight, and that gets changed a little bit later. And yeah, so that happened. Then you had Raven versus Chris Jericho. Jericho basically goaded Raven to be in this match, because Raven had been on a bit of a losing streak since Flock broke up right at Fall Brawl 98, and had done a quick tap out to Jericho recently on an episode of Nitro. As for the TV title, as Jericho was TV champion at the time, he was actually well wrestled. There was some good stuff, some good brawling outside. Raven and Jericho actually worked pretty well together here in this match, but this was during one of those dark periods for Raven, which then again, that was almost his entire career, because it was a very dark character. This is a few months before Raven and Saturn would start teaming up and be a hell of a tag team. Like, WCW, as they were falling apart, actually had a really good tag team division. Even in their rebuilding in 2000, they still had a really good tag team division. Big T, a.k.a. Ahmed Johnson, as part of Harlem Heat, notwithstanding. Anyway, you had some good stuff. You had Canyon try to interfere. Jericho knocked him off the apron. Soon, locks on the Lion Tamer for a second time. Raven had previously gotten to the ropes, fighting through it, and then taps out really, really quickly. Jericho retains. Fine opening match for what it was. And then Hogan and Bischoff have a promo hyping up the Warrior match, which apparently it was like an episode of Nitro with a couple bigger matches. Like, really, you had a lot of promos, you had a lot of interviews and stuff like that. Let the wrestlers go out and actually tell the goddamn story. Give the paying customers their money's worth. I don't remember how much WCW pay-per-views cost at the time. I don't remember if it was $30 or $40. I think it might have been 40. But the whole point is sometimes, and I remember watching some of these, I didn't watch all of them live, but I watched enough of them live at my buddy's house because his uncle ordered them. And we would, sometimes just think, why are we watching Nitro? Like, let's get to the goddamn wrestling. And then you had Ming versus Wrath, and it was okay. It was two big lads, smashing into each other. Ming did the honors by putting over Wrath. Wrath, who was pretty super over, especially physically imposing presence. Brian Clark, bit of an underrated worker, pretty agile and everything. He did pretty damn well. So yeah, you had that. Wrath got the win. Okay, cool. It was what it was. He had the meltdown. I think Wrath suffered an injury soon after this and had to be written off TV. But then you had one of the first of two cruiserweight based matches. You had Disco Inferno versus Juventud Guerrera to earn the right to face Kidman, the Cruiserweight Champion, later in the night. And I'm not a fan of Disco Inferno. I have made that clear. I think Disco Inferno's lousy. I think he's a lousy worker. By and large, he's pretty shit. He's a pretty shit human being. Was lucky to be in WCW, where they would just employ just about everybody. And I'm a fan of WCW. I love WCW. Wish WCW was still around. It wouldn't have been. It honestly wouldn't have been. It probably would have just been complete shit by 2005. Like, without that, we wouldn't have gotten Impact. And Impact actually was pretty revolutionary for a while and has done its good things since then. And please, check out the 10-year reflection I'll do on Bound for Glory 2008, which should be up sometime after this video. But anyway, cheap plug there. So it was a decent match. Disco is not even that Disco is the worst worker. I always thought he was just a shit worker because I never thought the Disco thing was all that good. When he wanted to actually wrestle, he could actually pull off some decent moves, but he also looked confused a lot because he wasn't up to snuff with a lot of the workers there. Hoovy, very, very good. Disco ends up winning after a pile driver, and Disco moves on to face Kidman for the Cruiserweight title. Then you have more Nitro Girls. You have Scott Steiner promo, where he brings a Giant out and basically says, hey, Rick, you got Buff in your corner. We're going to beat you both up. We'll put the WCW tag titles on the line. WCW Tag Team Championships meant jack and shit in 98. They were tossed around so goddamn much, which is sad. Really sad, because, again, there were some really good goddamn tag teams at this time. J.J. Dillon makes an offer that says, okay, Scott and Giant, if you can beat, if Rick and Buff somehow beat you, then you get to face your brother in that one-on-one match that we've been trying to promote for a goddamn year. Actually, it's been a couple months, but still. Anyway, so yeah, Scott agrees. Okay, and then we get Fit Finlay versus Alex Wright. The crowd was chanting boring. A bit unfair, but this match also didn't have any hype. There was some decent wrestling. Alex Wright did get the victory. The fittest of Finlays did not get the victory here. That's okay. I can't remember what caused him to have to leave wrestling for a bit. Well, I mean, become a trainer after in later '99. I think it was a junkyard match. It also might have been. It was like a leg injury or something like that, like one of the tendons in his legs. Can't remember all that, but it's like it was a shame because Finlay's a good worker, and I mean, sure, still is. I don't know if he's still wrestling or not. Alex Wright wasn't that bad in the ring. He really wasn't. He was never really given a chance to be much of anything more than like a mid-card guy. But yeah, this was the match that was pretty much throwaway. Then you had Saturn versus Lodi, and Lodi was trying to get revenge on the flock being broken up. And besides a few shots, Saturn just destroyed him. Just fucking destroyed him. Lodi's goddamn terrible in the ring. Maybe he actually isn't that bad, and they just saddled him with the gimmick where he just didn't really know how to wrestle. Because the West Hollywood Blondes with Lodi and Discount Chris Jericho, aka Lenny Lane, was a team I think that had some promise, but it just wasn't very good because neither guy was really given much of a chance to grow. Anyway, Nitro Girls again, hooray! Whatever. This is not Nitro. You didn't need to have them on pay-per-view, but whatever. And then Disco Inferno versus Kidman. It was a good enough match, well wrestled. Kidman obviously carried Disco as Disco had already wrestled. The idea was, of course, Kidman was going to get the victory. It would have been stupid to give it to Disco. And I think Disco did eventually become Cruiserweight Champion. Or maybe he just became TV Champion again, because I know he's TV Champion twice. Yeah, that was pretty lousy. Kidman wins after a shooting star press. It was a good match, for what it was. 1, 2, 3. And then Scott Steiner and the Giant versus Rick and Buff Bagwell. And what the fuck you think's going to happen? This is just a quicker version of the Fall Brawl 95 match that you had with Ric Flair and Sting versus Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman, except nobody was taken out backstage, and then Ric Flair, when he made his appearance, got the tag from Sting and then started immediately attacking Sting because he's Ric Flair. That was Halloween Havoc 95. I mean, right after Fall Brawl 95, where Arn and Flair had a pretty good match. But anyway, Buff Bagwell attacks Rick Steiner within the first couple minutes. Just kicks him in a low blow. Or, kicks him in the gut and that kind of stuff. Almost hits a low blow, but... And then Rick is battling, Buff leaves, and Rick is battling the Giant and Scott Steiner, and there's no way he's going to get the victory. Well, after some miscues, and Giant hitting a missile dropkick that Rick gets out of the way of, thankfully, and, hits Scott Steiner with it. Scott Steiner is over in the corner, out pretty much, and then falls out of the ring. Giant ends up getting hit with a bulldog off the top, 1, 2, 3, and Rick wins the tag titles, by the way. He wins the tag titles, and then later gives one to Judy Bagwell. Good job. I believe he gave it to her on a Nitro, because that didn't happen on this pay-per-view. And got to face his brother, Scott. And it was messy. There was a bunch of interference that Rick fought off and everything. And, this is just, You had a guy come down in a Clinton mask, Bill Clinton mask, at least I'm assuming that's what it was, Clinton or Vince McMahon mask, I think it was Clinton, and it was Buff Bagwell in a suit. And he ran through the crowd. I don't know why in the world he didn't just run down from the, from like the entranceway, because it was pretty obvious who it fucking was. And he got the slapjack from Stevie Ray, hit the ref, hit Rick, and kept trying to make the count with the ref's hand, and Rick kept kicking out. And then eventually, because that ref was down and because Buff Bagwell got knocked out of the ring, selling his neck and everything after hitting on the ropes, you then had Rick get the victory after Nick Patrick made the run in, and 1, 2, 3. Rick beats Scott, so yeah, he's become tag team champion, and he got revenge on his brother temporarily. And then they reunited a bit later, sometime in '99. Bit weird. Not very good. Not very good at all. And then you had Nash versus Hall, and this match actually was fine until a little bit later. It was very personal. Hall wanted to keep attacking Nash because he felt like he wasn't there for him, even though Nash was trying to be there to help out his best friend. This is when Hall was having his issues, and they did the last call with Scott Hall thing, which was embarrassing, goddamn embarrassing. I'm sure Hall wasn't easy to work with. That's pretty shitty to make fun of people's alcohol problems. But it was very physical, and Nash at first would not fight back. He would not fight back because even though he wanted to knock some sense into Scott Hall, that was also his boy, also his favorite, his best friend basically. And then eventually he did start overpowering him, hit a couple jackknifes, and I mean he had one, and then he had one that was super impactful, and then knew that he had knocked some sense into Scott Hall seemingly. And then left the ring, and Scott Hall won by countout, but he didn't look like the victor. He didn't look like the victor there. He may have won, Hall may have won, but he didn't necessarily win the war, because he was laid out. And a bit later, I think within like 6 weeks, you would have Hall and Nash as tag team champions. Maybe 6 weeks. Yeah, about 6 weeks. Maybe right before Starrcade 98, or right after Starrcade 98. Very messy. It made confusing that with Starrcade 99. I don't remember. Yeah, this was pretty... Yeah, I think it actually was Starrcade 99. A lot of that stuff with the tag titles gets confusing to me, but this was pretty damn bad. Though it was up until the point of the countout, it was fine for what it was. I mean, it did have a personal feel to it. But then, unfortunately, the next two matches were absolute dog shit. You had Sting versus Bret Hart for the U.S. title. Let me say that again. Sting versus Bret Hart for the U.S. title, and it was bad. And it was really, really bad. And it shouldn't have been bad. This should have been fan-fucking-tastic. You have two masters of the sharpshooter, Scorpion Deathlock, two super over talents, even with Bret playing the heel and Sting playing the babyface, and going through some changes in his life at this time, being part of the Wolfpack. He found religion, and he got clean, and that's great. That's great, honestly. Whether I'm a fan of religion necessarily or not, Sting, it helps Sting and everything. And Sting seemed to be in a better place at this point. But the problem with the match was it never really got out of first gear. And even when it kind of got into second gear, there really wasn't much to it. Now, they were telling the story of Bret would do anything to get the victory. Sting was trying to, beat up Bret for all the shit that he had done. And, yeah, I mean, they had the Scorpion Deathlock, Bret, sharpshooter, that kind of stuff and whatever. Even though Bret had the sharpshooter first. There was still some good stuff. Some good wrestling and everything, but then it went all off the rails, not even on a crazy train. You had Sting at one point do, the Stinger Splash, almost Scorpion Splash. Scorpion Splash would have been interesting. Don't Google that, by the way. Stinger Splash, but he ends up hitting the turnbuckle, or ends up hitting the steel bolt or the ring post and stuff like that. It's similar to what they did with Vader and Sting at Great American Bash 92, except you didn't have Sting get busted open. Not that you would have been able to tell because the red and black Wolfpack face paint would have covered up the blood. Anyway, Bret uses a bat a couple times, hits Sting in the throat, hits Sting off the ropes, ends up getting the sharpshooter on Sting. Though some would say Scorpion Deathlock was better. I think sharpshooter was better. They were basically the same move. But anyway, you have Bret Hart get the victory because the ref didn't see all this because the ref was down. There were a lot of ref bumps during this night. And Bret would actually lose the title to DDP the next night in a pretty damn good match on Nitro. So I really am going to have to watch that at some point. By the way, look for more movie reviews. I'll be doing like some horror movies and stuff like that. Horror movies from my collection, stuff I've watched on Netflix. And for later in the year, mid-December, late December, I will be doing a best and worst movies of the year list since I've watched quite a few in theaters. And by the way, big thanks for the support on the channel. So anyway, cheap plug there. And big thank you there. So now we go on to Hogan versus Warrior 2, Electric Boogaloo. Oh, God. Why did this match happen besides stroking Hogan's ego? Gross. This was, oh my God. This match couldn't have gone any worse. It honestly couldn't have. These two wrestled literally like they had never been in a wrestling ring at all. It was terrible. Warrior's timing was off. Hogan's timing was off. Everybody's timing was off. Now, the thing is I didn't necessarily think from a technical standpoint their WrestleMania 6 main event was great, but it had that big feel of these two mega baby faces and had this feel of like a once-in-a-lifetime match. And honestly, had it not been for WCW luring Warrior there in 98, it would have been a once-in-a-lifetime match because they never faced off again. Well, they never faced off like face-to-face, even though it could have happened a year or so later. But anyway, enough of that. This was one of the worst things ever. It was Hogan, racism, and Warrior, homophobia meeting. Racism and homophobia battling out to see which was worse, which was the more shit person. This match could not have gone any worse. I mean, as I said, this was so bad. You had everything from like bad, like they did the slam spots, the crisscross spots and stuff like that. They did that where Hogan hit a slam, Warrior no-sold it. Hogan, then Hogan got slammed and Hogan sold it. Hogan got knocked outside. You had all this terrible stuff. This is also playing on the week before. You had Horace Hogan get cracked over the head with a chair. That comes back into play later. You had interference. You had all this bad timing. And this is before we got to the goddamn flash paper spot. They were doing the tests of strength and stuff like that. That was terrible. They were doing all this stuff where like they were, doing the test of strength and slapping, running each other together, doing the shoulder spots. It was such goddamn shit. Warrior never belonged in the goddamn wrestling. Hogan at least had charisma. Warrior, sure, you didn't really understand what the fuck he was saying, but he did get some attention. He was pretty goddamn over. But I'm going to show you something. Look at this face. This is the face I made during the entire match. I mean, as best I could, because I can't impersonate Jim Cornette. It was an abomination. It was one of the worst matches of the 90s. One of the worst matches of all time. In fact, if I ever did, like, say, a top 50 worst WCW matches of all time, like at least pay-per-view matches, this would be on there. This might even be top 10. Because it was really, really bad. And to me, I would grade it because these are two guys that claim to be world-class athletes. Now, to be fair, both were a whole lot older than they were at the WrestleMania 6 encounter. But all it was just to stroke Hogan's ego. Have fun on seeing that. And Warrior got, I think, he got a couple $1 million, I think. Like, in the 3 months of the $1 million or a couple $1 million. I mean, he didn't deserve it. And Warrior never deserved any of the fucking money he earned in the wrestling business because he was a goddamn piece of shit. And I didn't shed one goddamn tear when he passed away. It's fine if you guys did. If you guys are Warrior fans watching this, I want you to know I am not in any way, shape, or form hammering you guys. That is great. And I'm not saying I cheered it that he passed away. I just didn't shed a tear because I just didn't care. Warrior's a piece of shit, and it was what it was. And this match proved that he really just didn't care. And Hogan didn't care either. I mean, I'm not absolving Hogan of any goddamn blame, but you get to the flash paper spot. Okay, Warrior, you had this belt spot. Hogan takes off his weightlifting belt, whips Warrior, whipping him like Hogan wants to whip black men. Because Hogan's a goddamn racist, and I'm not forgiving him for that. And then Warrior whips him and then hits him over the head with it. And then Hogan goes in the corner and gets out of his tights the bag. It looked like he was going to try to inject steroids right there. And got, the flash paper and this kind of stuff. And you're supposed to light the flash paper and, throw the fireball like that. Like the weakest Hadouken ever. That didn't work. He went to throw the fireball. It didn't work. And it blew up in his face, burned off his eyebrows, started to singe started to singe some of his Fu Manchu, but it blew off his eyebrows, if I recall correctly. And the fans start to laugh and everything, and you're watching this, you're thinking, these are the two world-class athletes. Thank God this match didn't main event. I mean, holy fuck, actually, this match being cut off, in the pay-per-view broadcast might have actually been better. But my God, this was about 25 minutes, or 20 minutes or something like that. It felt like it was about 5 years. Neither guy looked like they even cared. Neither guy looked like they belonged in a wrestling ring. It was just fucking embarrassing. It was just such shit. And then you had Horace Hogan come down. And he cracked Warrior over the back with a chair. And not a terrible chair shot. I mean, Horace Hogan was never... didn't seem like a terrible human being. He never should have been in the wrestling business, but he was never bad. He was never like Eric Watts levels of bad. Because Eric Watts just was not any good. This was just... This was good. This was the best train wreck you could possibly watch, but especially if you know what these guys are capable of, and especially if you know what WCW is capable of at this time, this match got so out of control. You had Bischoff at one point not attack the ref, but like hold the ref while the chair shot happened, and then Hogan got the victory and walked out, and Warrior's doing it just... Warrior made one more appearance, and that was on him, by the way, sorry about that, but Warrior made one more goddamn appearance. And it was goddamn rotten. It was absolutely rotten. And I apologize for the camera going a bit out of focus, but, Anyway, it was rotten. Warrior made one more appearance on Nitro, and it was shit. It was absolute goddamn bullshit. It was fucking ridiculous. And he was probably supposed to stick around the company, but he kept demanding more goddamn money. More money than he was worth. Which, by the way, $1 is too much for Warrior. I don't care how much charisma the guy claimed to have. Or whatever, or how much money he drew. That was years ago. The guy never improved how he was as a worker. Warrior was goddamn rotten. And, whatever. This was pretty much the last big match he had. He had that match against Orlando Jordan in Spain for, I don't remember the name of the promotion. But that was terrible. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, that was a terrible goddamn match. And that's the end of the review. No kidding. DDP versus Goldberg was a fine match. They showed it in its entirety, as I said. It was really, really good stuff. It was just, DDP probably should have been the one to end the streak here. Because there was this cool spot where he had been working on Goldberg's arm, and Goldberg hit the spear, but his shoulder was hurt. Then tried to hit the jackhammer, diamond cutter, and oh my god, the place exploded. The place exploded like crazy. You would have thought the DDP was about to get the victory, and probably should have, because the crowd really started to sour on Goldberg before this, but especially on this night, and DDP winning would have been a massive pop, but he didn't. Soon, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3, and it was a good match, and DDP actually got a U.S. title run out of it the next night. So anyway, blurriness aside during a bit at the end of that Hogan Warrior rant, thank you guys very much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of Halloween Havoc 98. Let me know if there's some WCW pay-per-views that you want me to review in their entirety. Now, I have done complete histories of every single pay-per-view so far, or at least most of them. So let me know what you guys think. I really would like to know what you guys think of this this particular event, and let me know what other pay-per-views you would like me to review. Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. And this has been Real Honesty with John Ritzlin. Hogan versus Warrior 2 was an absolute abomination and such an embarrassment. But anyway, I will see you soon.